Welcome back. Let's read this.
Gobi Desert. Gobi redirects here. For other uses, see Gobi, disambiguation. This article has multiple issues. Please help improve it or discuss these issues on the talk page. Learn how and when to remove these template messages. This article needs additional citations for verification. July 2007. This article is largely based on an article in the out-of-copyright Encyclopaedia Britannica 11th edition, which was produced in 1911. April 2022. The Gobi Desert, Mongolian, /B/ Chinese, Pinyin, GB, is a large, cold desert and grassland region in northern China and southern Mongolia and is the sixth largest desert in the world. The name of the desert comes from the Mongolian word Gobi, used to refer to all of the waterless regions in the Mongolian plateau, while in Chinese Gobi is used to refer to rocky, semi-deserts such as the Gobi itself rather than sandy deserts. Geography, edit. The Gobi measures 1,600 kilometers, 1,000 mi, from southwest to northeast and 800 kilometers, 500 mi, from north to south. The desert is widest in the west, along the line joining the Lake Boston and the Loch Nor, 87°–89° east. In 2007, it occupied an arc of land in area. In its broadest definition, the Gobi includes the long stretch of desert extending from the foot of the Pamirs, 77° east, to the Greater Khingan Mountains, 116–118° east, on the border of Manchuria, and from the foothills of the Altai, Sian, and Yablonoi mountain ranges on the north to the Kunlun, Altinta, and Chilean mountain ranges, which form the northern edges of the Tibetan Plateau, on the south. A relatively large area on the east side of the Greater Khingan Range, between the upper waters of the Songhua, Sungari, and the upper waters of the Liaoho, is reckoned to belong to the Gobi by conventional usage. Some geographers and ecologists prefer to regard the western area of the Gobi region, as defined above the basin of the Tarim in Xinjiang and the desert basin of Loch Nor and Hami, Kumul, as forming a separate and independent desert, called the Taklamakan Desert. Much of the Gobi is not sandy, instead resembling exposed bare rock. Climate, edit. The Gobi is overall a cold desert, with frost and occasionally snow occurring on its dunes. Besides being quite far north, it is also located on a plateau roughly 910–1,520 m, 2,994–990 foot, above sea level, which contributes to its low temperatures. An average of about 194 millimeters, 7.6 in, of rain falls annually in the Gobi. Additional moisture reaches parts of the Gobi in winter as snow is blown by the wind from the Siberian steppes. These winds may cause the Gobi to reach 40° C, 40° F, in winter to 45° Celsius, 113° Fahrenheit, in summer. However, the climate of the Gobi is one of great extremes, with rapid changes of temperature of as much as 35° Celsius, 63° Fahrenheit, in 24-hour spans. Temperature 1,190 m, Ulaanbaatar, 1,150 m. Annual mean 2.5° C, 27.5° Fahrenheit, 0.4° C, 31.3° Fahrenheit. January mean 26.5° C, 15.7° F, 21.6° C, 6.9° F. July mean 17.5° Celsius, 63.5° Fahrenheit, 18.2° Celsius, 64.8° Fahrenheit. Extremes 47 to 34 degrees Celsius, 53 to 93 degrees Fahrenheit, 42.2 to 39.0 degrees Celsius, 44.0 to 102.2 degrees Fahrenheit. In southern Mongolia, the temperature has been recorded as low as 32.8 degrees C, 27.0 degree F. In contrast, in Alxa, Inner Mongolia, it rises as high as 37 degrees Celsius, 99 degrees Fahrenheit, in July. Average winter minimums are a frigid 21 degrees C, 6 degree F, while summertime maximums are a warm 27 degrees Celsius, 81 degrees Fahrenheit. Most of the precipitation falls during the summer. Although the southeast monsoons reach the southeast parts of the Gobi, the area throughout this region is generally characterized by extreme dryness, especially during the winter, when the Siberian anticyclone is at its strongest. The southern and central parts of the Gobi Desert have variable plant growth due to this monsoon activity. The more northern areas of the Gobi are very cold and dry, making it unable to support much plant growth. This cold and dry weather is attributed to Siberian Mongolian high-pressure cells. Hence, the icy dust and snowstorms of spring and early summer plus early January, winter. Conservation, Ecology, and Economy, edit. The Gobi Desert is the source of many important fossil finds, including the first dinosaur eggs, 26 of which, averaging 23 centimeters, 9 in length, were uncovered in 1923. Archaeologists and paleontologists have done excavations in the Nemet Basin in the northwestern part of the Gobi Desert, in Mongolia, which is noted for its fossil treasures, including early mammals, dinosaur eggs, and prehistoric stone implements, some 100,000 years old. Despite the harsh conditions, these deserts and the surrounding regions sustain many animal species. Some are even unique, including black-tailed gazelles, marbled polecats, wild Bactrian camels, Mongolian wild ass and sand plovers. They are occasionally visited by snow leopards, Gobi bears, and wolves. Lizards are especially well adapted to the climate of the Gobi Desert, with approximately 30 species distributed across its southern Mongolian border. The most common vegetation in the Gobi Desert are shrubs adapted to drought. These shrubs included gray sparrow saltwort, Salsola passerina, gray sagebrush, and low grasses such as needle grass and bridle grass. Due to livestock grazing, the amount of shrubs in the desert has decreased. Several large nature reserves have been established in the Gobi, including Gobi Gurvan-Sikhan National Park, Great Gobi and Great Gobi B strictly protected area. The area is vulnerable to trampling by livestock and off-road vehicles. Effects from human intervention are greater in the eastern Gobi Desert, where rainfall is heavier and may sustain livestock. In Mongolia, grasslands have been degraded by goats, which are raised by nomadic herders as source of cashmere wool. Large copper deposits are being mined by Rio Tinto Group. The mine was and remains controversial. There was significant opposition in Mongolia's parliament to the terms under which the mine will proceed, and some are calling for the terms to be renegotiated. Specifically, the contention revolves primarily around the question of whether negotiations were fair. Rio Tinto is far better resourced, and whether Rio Tinto will pay adequate taxes on the revenues it derives from the mine. An agreement was reached whereby the operation will be exempt from windfall tax. Desertification, edit. The Gobi Desert is expanding through desertification, most rapidly on the southern edge into China, which is seeing 3,600 kilometers, 1,390 square mi, of grassland overtaken every year. Dust storms increased in frequency between 1996 and 2016, causing further damage to China's agriculture economy. However, In some areas desertification has been slowed or reversed. The northern and eastern boundaries between desert and grassland are constantly changing. This is mostly due to the climate conditions before the growing season, which influence the rate of evapotranspiration and subsequent plant growth. The expansion of the Gobi is attributed mostly to human activities, locally driven by deforestation, overgrazing, and depletion of water resources, as well as to climate change. China has tried various plans to slow the expansion of the desert, which have met with some success. The Three North Shelter Forest Program, or Green Great Wall, is a Chinese government tree planting project begun in 1978 and set to continue through 2050. The goal of the program is to reverse desertification by planting aspen and other fast-growing trees on some 36.5 million hectares across some 551 counties in 12 provinces of northern China. Ecoregions, edit. The Gobi, broadly defined, can be divided into 5 distinct dry ecoregions, based on variations in climate and topography. 1. Eastern Gobi Desert Steppe, the easternmost of the Gobi ecoregions, covering an area of 281,800 kilometers, 108,804 square mi. It extends from the Inner Mongolian Plateau in China northward into Mongolia. It includes the Yin Mountains and many low-lying areas with salt pans and small ponds. It is bounded by the Mongolian Matrian grassland to the north, the Yellow River Plain to the southeast, and the Alashan Plateau semi-desert to the southeast and east. 2. Alashan Plateau semi-desert lies west and southwest of the eastern Gobi Desert Steppe. It consists of the desert basins and low mountains lying between the Gobi-Altai range on the north, the Helen Mountains to the southeast, and the Chilean Mountains and northeastern portion of the Tibetan Plateau on the southwest. 3. Gobi Lakes Valley Desert Steppe, ecoregion lies north of Alashan Plateau semi-desert, between the Gobi-Altai range to the south and the Khangai Mountains to the north. 4. Dzungarian Basin semi-desert, includes the desert basin lying between the Altai Mountains on the north and the Tian Shan Range on the south. It includes the northern portion of China's Xinjiang province and extends into the southeastern corner of Mongolia. The Alashan Plateau semi-desert lies to the east, and the Imin Valley steppe to the west, on the China-Kazakhstan border. 5. Tian Shan Range separates the Dzungarian Basin semi-desert from the Taklamakan Desert, which is a low, sandy desert basin surrounded by the high mountain ranges of the Tibetan Plateau to the south and the Pamirs to the west. The Taklamakan Desert ecoregion includes the desert of Lop. Eastern Gobi Desert Steppe, edit. Main article, Eastern Gobi Desert Steppe. The surface is extremely diversified, although there are no great differences in vertical elevation. Between Ulaanbaatar, 48°00 and 107°00 and the small lake of Irandubasulor, 43°45 and 111°50 the surface is greatly eroded. Broad flat depressions and basins are separated by groups of flat-topped mountains of relatively low elevation 150 to 180 m, 490 to 590 feet, through which archaic rocks crop out as crags and isolated rugged masses. The floors of the depressions lie mostly between 900 and 1000 m, 3000 and 3300 feet, above sea level. Further south, between Irandubasulor and the Yellow River, comes a region of broad tablelands alternating with flat plains, the latter ranging at altitudes of 1100 m and the former at 1070 to 1200 m, 3510 to 3940 feet. The slopes of the plateaus are more or less steep and are sometimes penetrated by bays of the lowlands. As the border range of the Hainan is approached, the country steadily rises up to 1,370 m, 4,490 feet, and then to 1,630 m, 5,350 feet. Here small lakes frequently fill the depressions, though the water in them is generally salty or brackish. Both here and for 320 kilometers, 199 mi, south of Ulaanbaatar, streams are frequent and grass grows more or less abundantly. Through all the central parts, until the bordering mountains are reached, trees and shrubs are utterly absent. Clay and sand are the predominant formations, the watercourses, especially in the north, being frequently excavated 2 to 3 m, 6 feet 7 into 9 feet 10 in, deep. In many places in the flat, dry valleys or depressions farther south, beds of loess, 5 to 6 m, 16 to 20 feet, thick, are exposed. West of the route from Ulaanbaatar to Kolgan, the country presents approximately the same general features, except that the mountains are not so irregularly scattered in groups but have more strongly defined strikes, mostly east to west, west-northwest to east-southeast, and west-southwest to east-northeast. The altitudes are higher, those of the lowlands ranging from 1,000 to 1,700 m, 3,300 to 5,600 feet, and those of the ranges from 200 to 500 m, 660 to 1,640 feet, higher, though in a few cases they reach altitudes of 2,400 m, 7,900 feet. The elevations do not form continuous chains, but make up a congeries of short ridges and groups rising from a common base and intersected by a labyrinth of ravines, gullies, glens, and basins. But the tablelands, built up of the horizontal red deposits of the Hangai, or Brushev's Gobi Formation, which are characteristic of the southern parts of eastern Mongolia, are absent here or occur only in one locality, near the Shirumuran River. They are greatly intersected by gullies or dry watercourses. Water is scarce, with no streams, no lakes, no wells, and precipitation falls seldom. The prevailing winds blow from the west and northwest, and the pall of dust overhangs the country as in the Taklamakan and the desert of Lop. Characteristic of the flora are wild garlic, Calidium gracile, wormwood, saxaul, Nitraria kabiri, caragana, ephedra, saltwort and the grass Lasiagristus splendens. The Tana wild onion Allium polyripsum is the main browse eaten by many herd animals, and Mongolians claim that this is essential in producing the proper, hazelnut-like notes of camel arag, fermented milk. The vast desert is crisscrossed by several trade routes, some of which have been in use for thousands of years. Among the most important are those from Kolgan, at the Great Wall, to Ulaanbaatar, 960 kilometers, 597 mi, from Jukwon, in Gansu, to Hami 670 kilometers, 416 mi, from Hami to Beijing, 2,000 kilometers, 1,243 mi, from Hoho to Hami and Barkal, and from Lanzhou, in Gansu, to Hami. Alashan Plateau Semi-Desert, edit. Main article, Alashan Plateau Semi-Desert. The southwestern portion of the Gobi, known also as the Zidao or the Little Gobi, encompasses the distance between the Great Northern Loop of the Yellow River to the east, the Aegean River to the west, and the Chilean Mountains and narrow rocky chain of Longshao, 3,200 to 3,500 m, 10,500 to 11,500 feet, in altitude, to the southwest. The Ordos Desert, which covers the northeastern portion of the Ordos Plateau, also near the Great Northern Loop of the Yellow River, is part of this ecoregion within the middle basin of three great depressions into which Patanin divides the Gobi. Topographically, says Nikolai Pativolsky, it is a perfectly level plain, which in all probability once formed the bed of a huge lake or inland sea. He concludes this based on the level area of the region as a whole, the hard saline clay and the sand-strewn surface and, lastly, the salt lakes which occupy its lowest parts. For hundreds of kilometers, nothing can be seen but bare sands. In some places, they continue so far without a break that the Mongols call them tenga, i.e. sky. These vast expanses are absolutely waterless, nor do any oases relieve the unbroken stretches of yellow sand, which alternate with equally vast areas of saline clay or, nearer the foot of the mountains, with barren shingle. Although on the whole a level country with a general altitude of 1,000 to 1,500 m, 3,300 to 4,900 feet, this section, like most other parts of the Gobi, is crowned by a network of hills and broken ranges of at least 300 m in elevation. The vegetation is confined to a few varieties of bushes and a dozen kinds of grasses and herbs, the most conspicuous being saxaul, Haloxylonum dendron, and Agriophyllum gobicum. The others include Prickly convolvulus, field wormwood, Artemisia campestris, Acacia, Inula ammophila, Cyphera flavescens, Convolvulus amenii, Peganum and Astragalus species, but all dwarfed, deformed and staffed. The fauna consists of little but antelope, wolf, fox, hare, hedgehog, marten, numerous lizards and a few birds, for example the sand grouse, lark, stone chat, sparrow, crane, Mongolian ground jay, Podoces hendersoni, horned lark, Eremophila alpestris, and crested lark, Gallerida cristata. Zungarian Basin Semi-Desert, edit. The structure here is that of the mighty Tian Shan, or Heavenly Mountains, running from west to east. It divides the northern one-third of Sinkian from the southern two-thirds. On the northern side, rivers formed from the snow and glaciers of the high mountains break through barren foothill ranges and flow out into an immense, hollow plain. Here the rivers begin to straggle and fan out, and form great marshes with dense reed beds. Westerners call this terrain the Zungarian Desert. The Chinese also call it a desert, but the Mongols call it a Gobi, that is, a land of thin herbage, more suitable for camels than for cows, but capable also, if herds are kept small and moved frequently, of sustaining horses, sheep, and goats. The herbage comprises a high proportion of woody, fragrant plants. Gobi mutton is the most aromatic in the world. The Yulduz Valley or Valley of the Haydagul, 43° N 83° E 43° N 86° E, is a mini-desert enclosed by two prominent members of the Shinashan-Trayanosh mountain range, namely the Chusis and the Krisanard pine valleys, running perpendicular and far from one another. As they proceed south, they transcend and transpose, sweeping back on east and west respectively, with Lake Boston in between. These two ranges mark the northern and the southern edges respectively of a great swelling, which extends eastward for nearly 20 degrees of longitude. On its northern side, the Kolta descends steeply, and its foot is fringed by a string of deep depressions, ranging from Lutkin, 130 m, 427 feet, below sea level, to Hami, 850 m, 2,789 feet, above sea level. To the south of the Kurukta lie the desert of Lopna, the Kumta Desert, and the valley of the Bulanzagol. To this great swelling, which arches up between the two border ranges of the Kolta and Kurukta, the Mongols give the name of Gashuan Gobi or Salt Desert. It is some 130 to 160 kilometers, 81 to 99 mi, across from north to south, and is traversed by a number of minor parallel ranges, ridges and chains of hills. Down its middle runs a broad stony valley, 40 to 80 kilometers, 25 to 50 mi wide, at an elevation of 900 to 1,370 m, 2,950 to 4,490 feet. The Kolta, which reaches an average altitude of 1,800 m, 5,900 feet, is absolutely sterile, and its northern foot rests upon a narrow belt of barren sand, which leads down to the depressions mentioned above. The Kurukta is the greatly disintegrated, denuded and wasted relic of a mountain range which used to be of incomparably greater magnitude. In the west, between Lake Boston and the Tarim, it consists of two, possibly of three, principal ranges, which, although broken in continuity, run generally parallel to one another, and embrace between them numerous minor chains of heights. These minor ranges, together with the principal ranges, divide the region into a series of long, narrow valleys, mostly parallel to one another and to the enclosing mountain chains, which descend like terraced steps, on the one side towards the depression of Lutkin and on the other towards the desert of Lop. In many cases these latitudinal valleys are barred transversely by ridges or spurs, generally elevations en masse of the bottom of the valley. Where such elevations exist, there is generally found, on the east side of the transverse ridge, a cauldron-shaped depression, which some time or other has been the bottom of a former lake, but is now nearly a dry salt basin. The surface configuration is in fact markedly similar to that which occurs in the intermount latitudinal valleys of the Kunlun Mountains. The hydrography of the Goshen Gobi and the Kurukta is determined by the aforementioned arrangements of the latitudinal valleys. Most of the principal streams, instead of flowing straight down these valleys, cross them diagonally and only turn west after they have cut their way through one or more of the transverse barrier ranges. To the highest range on the great swelling Grigori Grump Shimela gives the name of Tujto, its altitude being 2,700 m, 8,858 feet, above the level of the sea and some 1,200 m, 3,937 feet, above the crown of the swelling itself. This range he considers to belong to the Cholta system, whereas Svenhedin would assign it to the Kurukta. This last, which is pretty certainly identical with the range of Karatkanula, also known as the Kyzyl Singa, Sinya, and Singa Mountains, that overlooks the southern shore of the Lake Boston, though parted from it by the drift sand desert of Akbelkam, White Pass Sands, has at first a west-northwest to east-southeast strike, but it gradually curves round like a scimitar towards the east-northeast and at the same time gradually decreases in elevation. At 91 degrees east, where the principal range of the Kurukta system wheels to the east-northeast, four of its subsidiary ranges terminate, or rather die away somewhat suddenly, on the brink of a long narrow depression, in which Svenhedin sees a northeast bay of the former Great Central Asian Lake of Lopnor, having over against them the echelon terminals of similar subordinate ranges of the Paishan, Boisan, system, see below. The Kurukta is throughout a relatively low, but almost completely barren range, being entirely destitute of animal life, save for hares, antelopes and wild camels, which frequent its few small, widely scattered oases. The vegetation, which is confined to these same areas, is of the scantiest and is mainly confined to bushes of saxaul, haloxylon, anabasis, reeds, camish, tamarisks, poplars, and ephedra. History, edit. Prehistory, edit. There is little information about early habitation of the Gobi Desert. Lisa Jans has proposed a system of nomenclature for early Gobi Desert habitation. They are Oasis I, Oasis II, Oasis III. Oasis I is equivalent to the Mesolithic from 13,500 calories BP to 8,000 calories BP. During this time people began using oases. It is characterized by 1 micro blades, 2 small milling stones, 3 small tools, 4 plain, low-fired, pottery with high organic content. Oasis 2 is equivalent to the Neolithic from 8,000 calories BP to 5,000 calories BP. People used the oases extensively. It was